What's up, gamers? It's Above, and in today's video, we have a huge reveal on the ARC 3.0 subclasses heading into Season 18. The dev team just released a full breakdown, so we're going to be going over that in depth to determine whether or not we think these subclasses are going to be meta for the day one raid race or not. If you enjoyed today's video, like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. Now let's get into it. I also want to note that we're going to kind of be jumping around this article. We're not going to read every single thing word for word, just highlighting the important points. But if you guys want to read through all of the patch notes yourself, everything will be down linked in the description below. So ARC is really just go fast and hit stuff. I really like this already. Those Guardians who have spent some time with revamped versions of Void and Solar, or Stasis for that matter, know the basics of where to begin with ARC 3.0. As with those other subclass options, ARC 3.0 will give players more flexibility over customizing their Guardian. Yeah, we all expect this, which is great. So let's dive into what exactly those abilities are. Before we dive into class-specific ARC abilities, let's talk about the buffs and debuffs that ARC 3.0 are going to experience. First of all, the fact that we're going to get a debuff is huge. I was worried. I kind of had this idea in my mind that ARC was going to be more movement focused. It's kind of the one area of the game that they hadn't really touched on. You know, you have ultimate control with Stasis, you have debuff and suppression with Void 3.0, and then you have igniting and explosions with Solar. So it's like, what do they have left to really cover with ARC? And it's cool to see that they're going in a movement direction, which is really, really cool. First up, the new buff, Amplified, which is key to ARC 3.0 experience. An Amplified Guardian is faster, both in terms of movement speed and in terms of handling their weapon, and more agile, able to perform longer slides that can function as a devastating setup for some attacks that follow, which is super cool. Unlike damage-type buffs, Void's Invisibility and Solar Radiant, players don't need to equip any specific aspects or fragments to become amplified, so it's just intrinsically built in. By default, all ARC classes become amplified after rapidly defeating targets with any ARC damage. Forbearance and Salvo, I'm looking at you, and equipped aspects and fragments offer additional ways to become or benefit from being amplified. I like the sound of this a lot already. After sprinting for a few seconds, an Amplified Guardian will gain another boost in speed, as designer Mike Humble put it, basically as fast as we can make our sprint animation go, gaining a sizable PvE damage resistance buff and enabling an even longer slide ability. This sounds really cool. I'm all about the movement speed. This leads me to believe two things. We're either going to have the 40% damage resistance that they buffed up for 10 resilience nerfed in some capacity, and this will be supplemental to that nerf. I don't know if that's the case. It's obviously just speculation, but if we're getting additional damage resist on top of the 40% that we already have, that is a little concerning to me. I know that players love power fantasy, but man, we are we're real strong right now. So let's see. Adding PvE damage resistance to speed boosters to cement it as a strong gap closing tool and seeing it as being used to move from one cover to the next, playtesting really brought it all together for me. You start sprinting and then hear this audio swell start to come up and you're like a jet engine rocketing around the arena. It's awesome. It sounds super fun. I'm stoked to see what this is all about. And they kind of mention these concerns as well, that speed booster probably took the longest for them to get on board with because obviously adding additional speed is not only difficult on coding, but it's also really hard to balance in things like PvP. So that doesn't surprise me one bit, but the fact that they're focusing on it as a PvE tool to help you close the gap, I think is super cool. I just worry about how strong we're getting with our resistance, but if this is added as a way to, you know, help combat one of the mechanics in King's Fall, where we're going to need, you know, insane movement, but have to be like dipping and dodging out of enemies, I'm all for it. On the debuff side, ARC 3.0 is bringing two to the party, Blind and Jolt. Blinded opponents in PvE won't be able to see, naturally, and will be disoriented and unable to fire their weapon. We've seen this with blinding grenades in D2 already. In PvP, blinded opponents will have their screen whited out and their HUD removed for a short period of time alongside a ringing audio effect simulating the ringing in the ears after a flashbang explodes. My poor PvP mains out there. Jolted opponents who are damaged will periodically send slivers of chain lightning out to nearby enemies, damaging them in the process. Interesting. Okay. Arc 3.0 also democratizes ionic traces, which were previously available only on middle tree warlocks, now available to all. If you guys haven't used that subclass, essentially they trace towards your position whenever you're using, you know, your grenade or charge melee ability. So like if you guys have ever used elemental wells and had seeking wells where your elemental wells will track towards your position, it basically emulates that type of behavior, but it acts as a way to recharge your abilities in the current sandbox. Now available to all, traces are objects that when collected will add energy for all of your abilities. So it looks like this is staying put for Arc 3.0, which is really cool because that was one of the best gameplay loops with the current Arc sandbox for Warlock. So I'm actually really excited to see that return. Hunter. A hunter dashing forward, crackling with the power of arc lightning, is a sight that is sure to strike fear in the heart of any enemy. As with previous subclass revamps, the team had definite images in mind when considering what the new arc should feel like in combat. For Hunter, the team imagined the graceful warrior monk, giving the hunter the ability to get in close quarters quickly and effectively to make a mess of their opponents in the process. That's actually cool. So this aligns extremely well with the current Arc Hunter identity, I would say. Most people play the top tree Arc Strider for combination blow, where melee kills not only trigger health regen, but you get increased damage, and people typically pair this with something like Liar's Handshake for even more damage and health regen, which is really cool. But they also have combat flow where melee kills recharge your dodge abilities. So basically you dodge, you get your charge melee, you punch, when you kill that enemy, you get your dodge back. So you essentially have 100 strength and 100 mobility up at all times, and you're regenning health. So you basically have 100 recovery as well. If this returns in Arc 3.0, which I hope they touch on later on down in the patch notes, that will be huge when paired with the increased damage resist and movement speed on a hunter. That's going to be really, really strong. They say here, for hunters, we wanted to reward staying in close and being safe while you're in close quarters with an enemy, which is very difficult to do in a lot of our content. So like GMs and master raid content. I think you could do it in normal raids and dungeons for the most part. I think it's mostly master and grandmaster content where those types of builds struggle. We wanted to give them tools to stay alive while they either close the gap or were in a melee combo. That came primarily in the form of giving them crowd control tools. To that end, the Hunter's Arc Staff Super is returning. Not surprising. With Arc Staff, hunters will be able to block and deflect projectiles, so middle tree Arc Staff in its current state with a press of the button, as well as perform an armored dodge, where upon dodging, the hunter is more resistant to incoming damage, which also exists, by the way. Lightning reflexes. You are harder to kill while dodging, and they're also combining it with Whirlwind Guard from the middle tree Arc Striders. It's just going to be more utility in general with the roaming super. So all really cool sounding. I'm just kind of waiting to see what they talk about with the neutral game. Oh, it's beautiful. On the melee side, the team kept the Hunter's combination blow ability, feeling like it was right in line with the graceful warrior fantasy that they were going for. Thank God, dude. I'm so happy to hear that. Kills with combination blow will refund dodge energy, increase melee damage. So all the things we just covered. Allowing skilled hunters to chain their dodges and melee attacks into ballistic bursts of beautiful fury. What a sentence. In addition, the disorienting blow melee returns, blinding opponents with a devastating palm attack, while also now amplifying the hunter along the way. Wow. So Arc Hunter just got a major buff, and that melee style may be far more viable in endgame content, which I'm very excited about, because you're not only going to be recharging your charge melee for more damage, you're going to be blinding enemies, you're going to be working on amplifying yourself, you're going to be having increased movement speed, damage resistance. This is going to be insane. But one super just didn't seem like enough for the team. Dude, no way. I literally called this. If they get a burst damage super.
What's my number one wish for Arc 3.0? Number one wish, hunters get a burst DPS super. Right now, they're all the same exact roaming super, and I would love to see them updated to have a burst DPS option. Like Synaptic Spear as their like a burst super would be sick as
Thus, the introduction of a brand new Arc-themed super, the Gathering Storm. Here, the hunter leaps into the air, hurling their staff into the ground or into an unlucky enemy like a spear. The Synaptic Spear is kind of what I'm imagining from Psyops. Upon impact, The staff emits a damaging burst that jolts nearby enemies. Soon after, a giant bolt of lightning strikes the staff and overcharges it, creating a large damage zone around it for several seconds. While overcharged, the staff sends out arc lightning to damage any enemies that move near it. Dude. No way. Bro, I'm so excited for this because we were talking about this on stream last night, which you can swing by at twitch.tv/above. Cheeky little shameless plug. I'm super stoked for this. Hunters have desperately needed a burst damage super, and this one sounds super cool. It seems like you can use it for crowd control, which is awesome. Like if you're thinking Vault of Glass, for example, where you're locking down a doorway and a spawn point on like confluxes or something like that, you're gonna be able to hold down a spawn point on your own. Like where the Wyvern and all the surrounding ads spawn, you can do that by yourself with that super. But I also think about this on things like Caretaker. As long as this doesn't inflict self-damage, think about the combinations you could start to run here. Slap some Anarchy on the boss, and you start swapping pellet shotguns, which now do insane damage. You know, maybe you're a hunter, you do that super, and then, you know, your tractor 1-2 punching, or you use Acreus. Like, there's so many options now for hunters to be viable in endgame content, and it has me extremely excited for the future of this specific subclass, and it seems like it's going to be really strong after reading into all these different things. Hunters will be able to choose from 3 aspects to customize their tactical playstyle. Flow state. Defeating a jolted opponent causes you to become amplified. When amplified, the hunter's dodge will recharge faster and make you more resistant to damage. And you have quicker reload times. Good lord. Tempest Strike allows the hunter to perform a sliding melee that launches an arc wave along the ground, dealing significant damage and jolting enemies in its path. Right now, Flow State seems much stronger than Tempest Strike. This seems more artificial unless they significantly buffed the range melee from Middle Tree Arcstrider. I don't think this is going to be used. And then we have Lethal Current. After dodging, the hunter's melee lunge range is increased, and their next melee attack jolts the target and creates a damaging lightning aftershock. Interesting. When used with the Arc Staff super after dodging, the hunter's next staff light attack hits twice. In addition to hitting a jolted enemy with a melee attack will blind them. That's pretty strong. I think I'm probably going to go with Flow State and Lethal Current off the rip and kind of see how that performs. Obviously, if they buff the damage of Tempest Strike, it could be really strong, so we'll have to see. Finally, and a particular note, Arc 3.0 will also bring back the Blink movement mode for Arc Hunter. In fact, the Blink ability will also include a baseline buff for any class that has access to it. Oh my god, so this is going to affect Void Warlocks as well. Wow. Dude, that's insane. Think about the movement potential now and skill gap on a hunter where you're meleeing and dodging and bobbing and weaving, trying to get damage in on enemies and blinding them and using your punches and combination blows and all that stuff to regen health and then blink to reposition behind cover. It's going to be a really fun playstyle. I'm very excited for it. Right, moving on to Warlock. 2 supers will be available to Warlocks. Chaos Reach, where players will be able to shoot concentrated beams of arc energy, as we all know, and Storm Trance, which is more akin to the image of Palpatine floating around the world. Yeah. All things returning. This super combines both the landfall behavior from the previous bottom arc tier, allowing a damaging shockwave underneath the player, and the ionic blink behavior from the old top tree, allowing the Warlock to teleport briefly during their super. That's cool. Because there were always aspects of both that were like unique and relatively strong, but separate. They were kind of just eh. So I'm really excited to see these things being brought together. Warlocks will also have 2 melees available, both utilizing the power of lightning. So we have the Ball Lightning melee, which is their ranged attack that they currently have, zapping enemies down from above. And Chain Lightning will send out arcs of lightning to strike and jolt the primary target and chain damage to surrounding enemies in the process. Also an existing melee, but looks like it's getting a bit of a buff. The Warlock's whole thing is that being amplified modifies their abilities. It powers them up. For Ball Lightning, if you're amplified, the Arc Ball will fly out and zap enemies 3 times instead of just the normal 1 time, so you can get more damage out of it. That's pretty cool. For Chain Lightning, it chains more to targets. That could be potentially very strong if you guys think about the Arc Web Grenade. If that gets dispersed among all the subclasses, not only would it be strong and worrisome for PvP a little bit, yikes, but also I think the Chain Lightning would still be the strongest on Warlock because of that triple damage. If you have Arc Web grenades that are doing 3 times their normal damage, that's going to be insane for PvE ad clear. You can pretty much lock down a spawn point with your grenade and then focus elsewhere because those things do an unbelievable amount of damage when chained to multiple targets. So Warlock is noticeably shorter, and I think for a reason. I think Arc Hunter was the subclass that by far needed the largest update, and it wasn't even close. 3 aspects will be available for Warlocks. Arc Soul, which is already a current one. The Warlock casts a rift to create an Arc Soul that will assist players in battle. This is low-key much better than people give it credit for. Allies who pass through the rift will also earn an Arc Soul. This can do some serious damage or break arc shields for you, like on their own. So it does have utility in endgame PvE. Next, we have Lightning Surge. The Warlock activates their melee while sliding to transform into a ball of lightning and teleport forward, calling down a field of lightning bolts at the exit point that jolts targets. Dude, people are going to have so much fun with these subclasses. I am so excited. That sounds nuts. An Electrostatic Mind. Arc ability kills and kills on arc debuffed enemies create ionic traces. When you collect any ionic trace, you become amplified. Ooh, these are going to be tough to choose from. I would say right now it'd probably be Lightning Surge. This may be gimmicky. We'll have to see. If it does decent damage, people are going to run this because it'll just be a blast to use. And Electrostatic Mind, I think, is going to be the must-have, and then you'll supplement it with either Arc Soul or Lightning Surge. And lastly, we have the whole W class. We've got the Titan. Titans haven't traditionally been known as paragons of mobility, but with Arc 3.0, the team is shaking things up. The team had a couple of inspirations in mind for Titan Arc revamp. The lead with your fist, bare knuckle brawler, and freight train style. Yep, sounds about right. Fist of Havoc and Thunder Crash. While the latter is practically unchanged from before, so essentially Thunder Crash is remaining pretty much the same, which I think is fair because it's a very strong endgame PvE subclass. It's used in a lot of places already, so I'm totally cool with that as long as they keep, the ballistic slam and like the fun elements of it. All that subclass really needed was a neutral game buff because that was the part that was a little bit weak, in my opinion. Fist of Havoc now has an adjusted slam radius that's halfway between top and bottom path, and the ground slam leaves behind a damaging field in its wake, while slamming from the air causes damaging AoE effects. I think this could be cool. I think you're still going to run into the same scenario where Thunder Crash just wins out because of Curus. I think they would need to buff the damage of the super significantly to make this viable and give you even additional damage resistance in endgame PvE if you want to use this in that scenario. One of the biggest changes coming to the Arc Titan is the new Thruster class ability. By double tapping a button, the Titan bursts into the throttle direction at speed, performing a quick first-person evade comparable in distance to a Hunter dodge. Wow, so it's not an aerial move like Twilight Garrison, it's on the ground. I think is an important distinction to make, but that's really cool. Okay, here we go. For melee attacks, Titan will retain the Seismic Strike shoulder charge, which blinds enemies. Performing a Seismic Strike while amplified will increase the radius of the blind, and blinding effects will last longer. Okay. And Ballistic Slam also returns, where players can slam the ground after sprinting in the air, creating a damaging explosion upon impact. Hell yeah, dude. I'm so stoked about that. It's one of my favorite parts of the subclass. Those returning melees will be joined by a brand new charged attack known as Thunderclap. I can't be the only one thinking what that sounds like, right? Here, the Titan player holds the melee button and charges up arc energy that can be unleashed in either a quick, powerful jab or held and built up to be unleashed in one furious punch that can be devastating to an opponent. The charged state cannot be stored, and the Titan must be on the ground to punch. The damage is significant. A 90% charged Thunderclap will one-shot Guardians in PvE, but that reward will be balanced by the time it'll take to build it up. Oh boy. They are setting themselves up for some sandbox tuning in the future, my friends. This will either be unbelievably broken in the sandbox and people will get pissed off about it because this reminds me of Arc Battery from back in the day. But also, I see huge potential with like a 1-2 punch sort of thing in PvE. This could be insane. Like other subclasses, Arc 3.0 Titans will have 3 aspects to choose from. Touch of Thunder improves arc grenades in the following ways. Flashbang. Fires an additional blind impulse on the first bounce. Pulse. When the grenade damages an enemy, it creates an ionic trace for the Titan. Pulse grenade damage increases over time as the grenade lingers after impact. Lightning. Grants an additional charge for lightning grenades and jolts targets on initial blast. This might make them usable inside of PvE. I kind of use them ironically now, but they're actually not bad. And that could make them very usable. Storm grenades. Creates a roaming thundercloud that moves and tracks towards enemies. And next we have Juggernaut. While sprinting and with full class ability energy, the Titan gains a frontal shield that blocks incoming damage. That could be unbelievably busted in PvP. People are going to be bald facing that. When amplified, the shield is stronger. Oh, good. Once the shield is depleted by taking damage, the player's class ability energy is depleted. This is really cool. I mean, there's a trade-off here, right? So you're not going to get your barricade if the shield is broken, which it likely will be in endgame content, so I'm not sure how viable this will be. Depending on how big the shield and resist is, though, it could be very strong. Knockout. Melee kills trigger health regeneration and make the Titan amplified. Critically wounding an enemy or breaking their shield increases melee range and damage for a brief period. Spark of Beacons. When the player is amplified, Arc's special weapon kills create a blinding explosion. Wait, huh? Arc special weapon kills create blinding explosions. Wait, if I'm reading this correctly, Forbearance and Salvager Salvo are going to be so unbelievably strong in PvE next season. You're going to be exploding everything. This is literally a buffed blinding grenade built into those special weapons. You're going to have a carpet bomb of explosions and ad clear, but also suppression for anything you don't kill. Those weapons are going to be unbelievably powerful in endgame PvE. Spark of Resistance. When surrounded by enemies, the player has increased damage resistance. Our resistance meta that we're in right now is a little too strong, and the fact that we're adding on to that is slightly concerning, but I mean, it's going to be really fun. You're going to be able to tank a lot of damage. I think they're using it because obviously you're going to be, you know, more up close and personal on Arc 3.0. So, you know what, man? If it's fun, I'm all for it. Spark of Momentum. Sliding over ammo will reload your weapon and grant a small amount of melee energy. Sliding over heavy ammo increases the amount of energy generated. That's cool. And then Spark of Shock. The player's arc grenades jolt enemies. So these are really cool. What a crazy update. I hope you guys enjoyed the deep dive. If you did, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. I'm so stoked for Arc 3.0. I hope you are too. And we'll be streaming the reveal live on August 23rd at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Swing on by if you haven't before. Come say hi in chat, twitch.tv/above, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.